Hey there, friend. Settle in. The next 35 minutes belong to you and to a woman on a Wyoming claim who is about to say something to a horse that she should probably only be saying to God. Stay with me. The story is worth it. Easy now. Easy, you black devil. I know what you are, and I know what you are not. You are not what got into my hen house last week. You are not what kicked my gelding halfway across the north pasture. And you are not the animal I am going to load onto a wagon and sell for $30 in Cedar Bluff, no matter what the man at the feed store said about the meat on you. Vera Holm kept one hand low, palm out, the way her brother Caleb had taught her when they were children, catching strays in the bottoms near the Platte. The stallion stood 30 feet away, head up, watching, black as river water at midnight. No white on him at all. He had been circling her cabin for 9 days, and on the 7th day, he had killed a yearling colt she had raised from birth. She had cried for an hour after that. Then she had put the body in the root cellar because waste on a claim is a sin you pay for in March. Vera had not cried in front of the horse. Animals do not care about your tears. They care about the shape of your shoulders and the speed of your breath. Here is what you need to know about her. Vera Holm was 28 years old, sole owner of 160 acres 2 miles east of a town whose name she still sometimes mispronounced. The cabin was 2 rooms, chinked with lime and good intentions. The barn was a lean-to with a tin roof that sang in the wind. 11 chickens, 1 milk cow, a lame gelding named Reuben, and a quiet life that suited her well. Then her brother Caleb had died in March. Fever, 3 days, a box made by a neighbor who would not let her see him buried. Then the stallion had come down from the hills in May. She did not say any of that to the horse. She said, "You are not what I am going to shoot either, even though I should." The county men would pay a bounty. A clean black stallion like this one would fetch $12 from the hide men, and a tidy wife at the general store would tan the hide into a rug. Vera did not want a rug. She wanted the horse to come closer. Now, the closest neighbor was a man named Ezra Calder, 62 years old, widower, owner of a spread twice the size of hers. His wife Sarah had been dead 3 winters. In all that time, Vera had never once seen him laugh out loud. She had seen him smile at a dog. She had seen him nod to her from his buckboard, but the laugh, the real one, the one Sarah used to drag out of him at the supper table, was gone. On the morning of the 10th day, Ezra Calder drove his old dun mare up the road and stopped at her fence. He did not get down. He just sat there, reins loose, and looked at the black stallion standing broadside to her in the morning sun. He said, "That one there killed my heifer last Tuesday." Vera said, "I know." "I am sorry." He said, "I came to tell you I am not blaming you. I know he is not yours." She said, "He is not." He said, "Then what are you going to do about him?" And Vera, who had been holding her hand out flat for 10 days, said the only honest thing she could. She said, "I am going to tame him." Ezra Calder looked at her, then at the stallion, then at the 2-room cabin, the tin roof, the 11 chickens, the cow, the lame gelding, then back at her. He said, "All by yourself?" She said, "All by myself." He said nothing for a long time. Then he touched the brim of his hat, the way a man does when he has decided not to argue with a woman, and he turned the dun mare around and drove back down the road. Vera watched him go. The dust settled. The stallion shifted one hoof, then the other. The morning was already warm. Somewhere in the hills, a hawk called once and was answered by nothing. She turned back to the horse. She said, "Well, you heard him?" The horse looked at her. The horse did not move. She said, "I will see you tomorrow." And she walked back to the cabin where Caleb's coat hung on its hook. And she sat down at the table and drank coffee that had gone cold 2 hours ago. And she did not cry. If you are enjoying this story, go ahead and tap that. Like for me, it tells the channel this kind of tale is worth telling. Now, stick with me. The horse is not the hard part of this story. The horse, in the end, is the easy part. Vera made herself a chair. She dragged a wooden kitchen stool out to the north pasture, set it in the long grass 40 feet from where the stallion liked to drink, and she sat on it. She brought a tin of oats. She brought a tin cup of water. She brought a book she had already read twice, and she set it on her lap, and she did not read it. The first morning, the stallion did not come. He watched from the rise. By mid-morning, her legs were numb. She stood, knocked the dirt off the stool, and walked back to the cabin. The second morning, he came closer. 25 feet. He did not eat. He stood, head high, and watched her hands. She did not move her hands. The third morning, she thought about quitting. She had not slept well. Caleb's coat had fallen off its hook in the night, and she had found it on the floor in the dark. She did not want to go to the north pasture. She went anyway. The stallion was 10 feet from the stool. She sat. She did not breathe. He did not breathe. The wind pushed the long grass flat in waves, and somewhere to the south, a meadowlark was singing its 3 notes over and over. So, let me ask you this. What do you do when the only thing you can control is your own breath? When the animal you are trying to reach is the same one that killed your yearling, and the man who could help you drive him off has a bad back and would not drive him off anyway. What do you do? Tell me in the comments. I read them. I want to know what you would have done. Vera's answer, the one she made with her body and not with her mouth, was this. She sat still. She did not feed him. She sat until the meadowlark gave up, and a little longer, and then she walked back. Behind her, when she turned at the fence, the stallion had lowered his head and was cropping the grass. He had taken 3 steps closer. The fourth morning, when she came out with the stool, there was a sack of oats at the fence, coarse burlap, tied with baling twine, and a folded piece of brown paper inside. The handwriting was slow and careful. He had written, "For the black one, if you can get him to take it." Vera looked down the road toward Ezra Calder's place. There was no dust. He had come before daylight and gone. She carried the sack to the pasture, poured a thin line of oats in the grass, set the stool 10 feet from the line, and sat down. The stallion did not come that morning. He came the next. He ate 4 bites, then wheeled and ran. The morning after that, he ate the line clean. Here is the secret of a wild horse, and I do not care who tells you different. It is not bravery. It is not some gift. It is that you have to be willing to be bored, day after day, and willing to lose. You have to pour a line of oats that the wind will scatter. You have to sit on a wooden stool until your tailbone aches. You have to fail in front of the animal and not care that the animal watched you fail. Most people you have ever met could not do that. Vera Holm could. By the end of the second week, the stallion would come to the line while she was still on the stool. He would eat, and she would talk to him in the low voice she had used on her colt when he was sick. She would tell him about Caleb, about the cabin, the lame gelding, the 11 chickens, about Ezra Calder's heifer, which had been a good cow and never deserved what she got. The stallion did not care. He ate, the oats were good, and Vera's voice was low, and the sun was warm on his black back. On the 16th morning, when she came out with the stool, the sack at the fence was full again. The brown paper inside had 3 words on it. He had written, "You are doing fine." Vera sat down in the long grass with the paper open on her knee and watched the stallion work his way down the line of oats. She did not cry, but her throat was tight and the meadowlark was singing its 3 notes again. And somewhere down the road, a man on a dun mare was probably checking a fence he did not need to check. The morning the stallion let her touch him, the world did not change. The meadowlark did not stop singing. The sun did not crack open. Vera Holm reached out her hand, palm flat, the way her brother had taught her when they were children, and the stallion stretched his neck and put his nose on her fingers for exactly 1 second. And then he pulled back and walked 4 steps away and stood there, watching her with the small, hard eyes of an animal that has just given something and is not sure it will be returned. Vera did not move for a long time. Her fingers smelled of horse and warm grass. Then she lowered her hand and sat until the stool grew cold under her. And then she stood and walked back to the cabin. She did not tell anyone. There was no one to tell. The weather broke on a Wednesday. Vera saw it coming in the morning, the way you see a thing coming in Wyoming, which is that you look west, and the horizon has gone the color of a bruise. She should have stayed at the cabin. Caleb had taught her that you do not go out into a storm if you do not have to. She went anyway. The stallion was at the line, and she did not want him to wait alone when the sky was about to come down. The first gust hit her as she stepped off the fence rail. The rain came in a wall. The stallion stood 15 feet from her, mane whipping sideways, and he did not run. The lightning was close, the kind of close you can feel in your teeth. She thought about leaving him. She thought about the lean-to 40 feet away, and how she could lead him there if she was willing to lose the line of oats, and how he might follow, and how he might kill her, and how a person could die of wet and cold out here just as easy as a horse could. She stood up. She walked toward him with her hand out, palm flat. He let her close the distance. He let her put her hand on his neck. He let her turn his head. She did not have a halter. She did not have anything but her hand, but she walked him step by step to the lean-to, and he followed. His ribs were heaving under her palm. They stood together under the tin roof and listened to the hail come down on the tin and on the grass and on the world. The stallion's breath came in long hitches. Vera's breath came in long hitches. Neither of them moved. Vera slept in the lean-to that night, in the hay, with her shoulder against the stallion's flank. He did not move. She did not move. In the morning, when she woke, he was still there. Ezra Calder came at sunrise. He came on foot, not on the mare, with his hat in his hand and his white hair pushed every which way by the wind. He stopped at the fence. He looked at the lean-to. He looked at the black stallion standing inside it, with Vera's coat thrown over his back, where she had put it in the night because he was shivering. Vera walked out to the fence. Her boots were caked with mud and she had hay in her braid. She said, "I am all right." Ezra said, "I can see that." She said, "I had to bring him in. He would have died in it." Ezra looked at the stallion and at the coat on his back and at Vera. He put his hat back on. He said, "That is a good coat on him." Vera said, "It was my brother's." He said nothing for a long time. Then he reached into his coat pocket and took out a small paper twist of salt and a short piece of baling twine. He handed them across the fence. He said, "Rub the salt on his gums. It will help him trust you. And if you ever need me, you send Caleb's boy down the road, except I do not think Caleb had a boy." Vera said, "He did not." Ezra said, "Then you send the girl. I will come." He turned and walked back down the road. He did not look back. Vera stood at the fence with the salt and the twine in her hand. The stallion stood in the lean-to, in her brother's coat. The sun was up. The world smelled of wet grass and the iron taste of the storm. She went back to the lean-to. She knelt in the hay beside the stallion, and she unwrapped the paper twist, and she put her hand on his jaw, and he let her. He let her. The fence was the trouble. It had been the trouble for years before Caleb died, and it was the trouble after. The boundary between Vera's claim and Ezra's spread ran along a dry creek, and the creek had washed out in the spring flood, so that half of Ezra's north pasture was sitting on Vera's side of the line, and Ezra's cattle were drinking at her trough. Ezra came by one morning on the dun mare. He said, "I will move them today." Vera said, "You are welcome to leave them. The trough has water enough for both." He said, "That is not how it works." He said, "You are running a claim on your own, and the last thing you need is the neighbor's stock trampling your grass." They argued about it for 20 minutes, in the dry creek bed, in the morning sun, and at the end of it, Ezra was right, and they both knew it. The cattle had to be moved. But Vera said she would help him move them, and Ezra said his back was bad, and Vera said, "Then I will do it, and you will sit on the stool." So they worked. Vera moved the cattle back across the creek, and Ezra sat on the stool at the fence line and gave her directions in his slow, careful voice. When she finished, she came and sat on the ground beside the stool, and he poured her a cup of water from his canteen, and they sat for a while in the sun without talking. That is how it began. Now, have you ever noticed that two people who are grieving the same way cannot talk about it directly, but they can build a fence together? Leave your answer in the comments because I want to hear it. Because I think there is something in that, and I do not have the language for it. Over the weeks that followed, Vera and Ezra Calder began to share the work of the two claims without saying so. He would come by at sunrise and find the south fence already mended, and he would leave a coil of new wire on her porch. She would go to his place in the evening and find his horse already rubbed down, and she would set a jar of her preserves on his kitchen step and not knock. Once, when she came in to mend a broken latch on his hen house, she saw the empty chair. It was at the head of his kitchen table. The chair was a good chair, oak with a worn seat. There was nothing on it. There was nothing around it. He had set it there years ago, and he had not moved it, and he had not sat in it. Vera did not ask. She mended the latch. She went home. The locket she found another time, in his shirt pocket, when he leaned over the fence to take a piece of broken wire from her hand. It was a small oval thing on a thin chain, and it had worn through the cloth of his pocket so that she could see the dull gold of it through the tear. He noticed her notice it. He did not say anything. He put his hand over the pocket. She went back to mending the fence. She did not ask about that either. What she did on the night after she saw the locket was sit at her own table in her own cabin with the lamp low, and she took Caleb's coat down off the hook and she held it in her lap for a long time. She did not cry. She had stopped crying for Caleb in April, and she had not started again. But she sat with the coat for a long time, and she folded it the way he would have folded it, and she put it back on the hook. In the morning, when she went to the north pasture, the stallion was at the line waiting for her, and he let her put her hand on his face, and she stood there with her hand on the warm black jaw of an animal that was learning to trust her. And she thought about the empty chair at Ezra's table, and the locket in his pocket, and the way a man can carry a woman for 3 winters and still not put her down. She thought, I am in trouble. She thought, I do not mean with the horse. She thought, that is a different kind of trouble. She took her hand off the stallion's face. She went back to the cabin. She put the coffee on. She did not go down the road that day. The day she saddled the stallion was a Tuesday in late August. She had been working toward it for a month. She had a borrowed halter from Ezra, and a bit she had bought with the egg money in town, and a saddle she had taken off the lame gelding Reuben. The stallion did not want the saddle, but he let her put it on in the end, because he had learned that when Vera said she was going to do a thing, she was going to do the thing, and the easiest way through was to stand still. When she swung her leg over, his back went tight under her. She sat. He did not move. The sun was on the back of her neck, and the wind was from the west, and the meadowlark was not singing. She said, "Walk on." He walked on. Ezra Calder was at his porch when she rode up the road. He had been in the chair at the end of the porch, the one with the broken slat, and he was not expecting her. The stallion was damp with sweat, and so was Vera, and there was a smudge of dust on her chin where she had wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Ezra stood up. He did not speak for a long moment. He was looking at the stallion the way a man looks at a thing he has been told is impossible and has just been shown to be true. He said, "You did it." Vera said, "He did it. I just sat on him." He came down off the porch. He put his hand on the stallion's neck, and the stallion let him, which was a thing the stallion did not do for many men, or for any man except Vera. Ezra's hand was big and brown, and the skin on the back of it was cracked from the sun. He stood there with his hand on the horse and looked up at Vera on his back, and the look on his face was a thing she had never seen on it before. It was not a smile. It was the place where a smile would have been, on a man who had forgotten how. He said, "Get down and have some coffee." She got down. They sat on the porch. The coffee was bad. It was always bad at Ezra's place, because he made it too strong and let it sit on the stove for an hour. But they drank it anyway, and they did not talk about the horse. They talked about the fence on the south line. They talked about the milk cow. They talked about whether the county men would try to collect a bounty on the stallion now that the stallion was no longer wild. And Vera said she had been thinking about that. And Ezra said, "You do not have to think about it alone." That was the first thing he said that night that she held on to. The second came later, when the coffee was finished and the sun was low, and she stood up to walk home. She said, "I should go. The horse will need rubbing down." He said, "I will walk him for you." She said, "You do not have to." He said, "I know I do not have to." She looked at him. He was 62 years old. His hair was white and his hands were cracked and his back was bad, and he had not laughed out loud in 3 winters. And he was looking at her across the porch with the same look he had given the horse and Vera home, who had been alone on 160 acres since March, who had tamed a wild stallion with a sack of oats, and her bare hand felt the floor go out from under her. Ezra said, "If I were 20 years younger, I'd marry you, Cowgirl." He said it the way a man says a thing he has been holding in his mouth for weeks. He said it with the hat in his hand. He said it as a joke, which it was, and he said it as the truth, which it also was. And then he put his hat back on, and he did not take it back, and he did not walk it forward. Vera stood on his porch. The coffee cup was in her hand. The stallion was at the fence, cropping grass. The meadowlark was singing its 3 notes somewhere down the road, and the world was quiet, and the joke was not a joke, and she had to say something back. She said, "Ezra." He said, "Ma'am." She said, "Do not say ma'am to me." He almost laughed. She saw the corner of his mouth go, and then stop, and then go again, and then the laugh came out of him, small and rough, like something that had been living in a closed room for 3 winters and was being let out for the first time. Vera set the cup down on the porch rail. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The laugh was enough. The laugh was more than enough. She walked home in the long grass, with the stallion following her like a dog, and the sky behind her was the color of an old penny, and she did not look back. The trouble did not come from Ezra. The trouble came from Cedar Bluff. It came on a Saturday when Vera went to town for sugar and nails, and the woman behind the counter at the general store, whose name was Hattie and who had not spoken to Vera in a year, said, "Your father-in-law is looking well." Vera said, "He is not my father-in-law." Hattie said, "No, but he might be, the way the 2 of you have been carrying on." Vera set the sugar on the counter. She said, "Ezra Calder is my neighbor. He has been kind to me since my brother died." Hattie said, "Kind." She said, "Kind is one word for it." Vera paid for the sugar. She paid for the nails. She did not say another word. She walked out of the store and stood on the wooden sidewalk for a long time, with the sun on her face. "Now, I want to ask you something serious. When somebody who has no business in your life decides they have business in your life, what do you do? When a woman behind a counter who has not spoken to you in a year decides she knows your heart and tells the preacher, and the preacher tells 2 women at the church, and one of the women has a cousin in the mines whose last name is Calder, what do you do? Tell me in the comments, because I think the answer matters, and I do not think there is just one of them. 2 weeks later, a letter came down the road on the stage. The driver left it under a rock on Vera's porch. It was addressed to Ezra, care of the home place, and it was from his older boy, Josiah, who worked the mines in Montana. Vera carried it down the road in the early evening. The sky was the color of bruised plums. The stallion walked beside her, off the lead, because he had been walking beside her for a month now and had not tried to leave. Ezra was on the porch, in the chair with the broken slat. He stood up when he saw her coming. Vera said, "This came for you." He took it. He held it for a long time, and then he sat back down, and Vera sat on the porch step, and they waited while Ezra read. When he finished, he folded the letter and put it in his shirt pocket, on the other side from the locket, so that he had one thing on each side of his chest. He said, "Josiah wants me to come to Montana." Vera said, "Are you going to go?" He said, "I do not know. He is worried about me being out here alone. He has heard talk in town." Vera said, "What kind of talk?" He said, "The kind that says I have been keeping company with a woman young enough to be my daughter." Vera did not say anything. The stallion shifted one hoof. Ezra said, "The boy means well." Vera said, "I know he does." He said, "He wants me to sell the place." Vera said, "Will you?" He said, "No. This is the place I lived with Sarah." Vera said, "Then what are you going to do about me?" He said nothing for a long time. The light was going out of the sky. The stallion put his head over the fence, and Ezra put his hand on the horse's nose, and the horse did not pull away, and the three of them stood in the quiet with the letter in his pocket and the locket in his pocket and the question on the porch between them. Vera said, "Ezra." He said, "Ma'am." She said, "Do not say ma'am to me." He almost laughed. The laugh came out of him, small and rough, the way it had been living in a closed room for 3 winters. Vera said, "I am not going to ask you to choose. I am not going to ask you to stay, and I am not going to ask you to go. I am going to ask you to let me stand on this porch with you for as long as you will let me. And if the answer is that you cannot, then I will go home and milk my cow and mend my fence. And you can go to Montana with Josiah, and I will not blame you." He looked at her. His hand was on the horse. His hand was on the letter. His hand was on the locket. He said, "You are a hard woman, Vera Holm." She said, "No, I am not. I am a tired one." He said, "All right, then sit down. The coffee is on the stove." They were married in October, on a Tuesday, in the parlor of the small wooden church in Cedar Bluff. The preacher was a man named Tobias, who had known Ezra for 30 years and who had, until that morning, refused to believe the gossip. He cried quietly during the service into the sleeve of his black coat, and Vera pretended not to see. There was no music. There was no wedding dress. Vera wore a dark blue wool she had cut and sewn herself, with her brother's good white shirt under it, the one she had not had the heart to wear since the funeral. Her hair was in a single braid, the way she always wore it, and she had not put any color on her face because she did not own any. Ezra wore his Sunday suit. He had shined his boots. The locket was in his shirt pocket, on the left side, the side closest to the heart. He had written to Josiah 3 times, the 3rd letter he had not sent. because he had decided, with the slow care of a man who does everything in his own time, that the boy would have to make his peace with the postmaster instead of with his father. The stallion was at the hitching post of the churchyard. He had not tried to leave. There was no dinner to speak of. Ezra had put a kettle of stew on the stove that morning, and the stew was good, and they ate it at his table. And Vera sat in the chair that had been empty for 3 winters. She did not ask if she was allowed. She just sat down, and Ezra looked at her in the chair, and he did not say anything. And the chair did not say anything. And they ate their stew in the quiet of the kitchen, and the light was coming in the window at the angle of late afternoon, and the coffee, finally, was not bad. After supper, she walked out to the porch. The stallion was cropping grass by the fence. Ezra came out and stood beside her, and he put his hand on the rail, and she put her hand on top of his, and they stood there for a long time without speaking, and the meadowlark was singing its 3 notes down the road, and the sky was the color of a clean sheet, and the air smelled of sage and of the stew, and of the first cool breath of the autumn. Ezra said, "I am 62 years old." Vera said, "I know." He said, "I will not be a young husband." Vera said, "I did not ask for a young husband. I asked for you." He said nothing for a long time. Then he turned his hand over under hers, and he held her hand. And his hand was rough and warm and the size of a small shovel. And they stood there on the porch in the last of the light. And the stallion came up to the fence and put his head over the rail, and Ezra put his other hand on the horse's nose. And the 3 of them stood there in the quiet of the evening. And Vera Holm, who had been alone on 160 acres, who had tamed a wild stallion for a man who was not asking to be married, who had learned that a joke can be a way of saying a thing you do not have the courage to say straight, felt the floor come back under her feet, and the floor held. That is where I am going to leave them. Not because the story is over, but because some stories are not the kind you finish. They are the kind you walk into, and you keep walking, and the camera does not follow you past the porch. If this story stayed with you, leave me a word in the comments. Not a long one, just a word or a sentence or a name. Tell me who you are, or who you are walking with, or who you are walking toward. I will read them, all of them, the way Vera read the line on the brown paper, slow and careful, and I will not forget them. If you want more stories like this one, the kind that move at the speed of a wooden stool in a long grass field, you know where the subscribe button is. Tap it, and I will see you next time. The next story is already waiting. It is about a woman and a river, and a man who comes home from a war that nobody won. Until then, be well, be kind to the people in your house. And if there is a wild thing in your life that needs taming, do not chase it. Sit down in the grass with your hand out flat and wait. The hard part is the waiting. The waiting, in the end, is the only part that is worth anything. Good night.